All right, everyone, in today's lecture, we're going to start thumbnailing our story. Okay, now, if you aren't familiar with the term thumbnails, what a thumbnail is a small, rough sketch of a layout. In this case, it would be a small, rough sketch of a page layout. And as you can see here, we've got two templates. This is our full page template. Okay, so on this sheet here, which is letter size, and if you want to print them out and work in pencil, absolutely do that. That's what I usually do. So this is letter size, and be easily printed out. And over here, this one also is letter size, but you notice there's 4 pages on the letter size page. Okay, some people prefer to use these 4-up ones so they can see how the action flows from one page to the next. All right, I usually use the full page ones, but if you want to go with the smaller ones, that's fine too. Okay, it doesn't really make any difference at all. The main thing that you want to do though is figure out what your layout is going to look like for each page before you start putting it on the big paper. Okay, the 11 by 17 Bristol, or well, some people use illustration board, whichever, but that stuff is more expensive, and so you want to have stuff figured out on the front end. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this out. I'm just going to use this one here, so I'm just going to put that right there. Notice down here there is a background layer. This layer 1 actually has the template on it, and then there's another layer that says artwork, and that's the layer that we're going to draw on. Of course, we need to take a look at our script. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, this is the finished script for the story that I started the other day. Okay, this features the character that I created in some earlier videos set in the ancient world. The character's name is Arnza. That's the main character, and his buddy Dex. Okay, and as you can see here, we've got a rundown of all the speaking parts, which we talked about when we talked about the script, and here we go. 1. That means page 1, and it's going to be 3 panels. At least that's the way I sort of planned it in my head. Let's see, panel 1, half-page panel, establishing shot. So that shows us where we are. Okay, that's a big one. All right, big half-page panel. Arnza and Dex are arriving at a Celtic settlement outside of the city of Flafuna. That's where they live. Arnza is wearing a small sling bag. There is a lot of activity going on. There is a blacksmith and maybe a cooper. A cooper is somebody that makes wheels and barrels. Are at work in their shops. Let's see. Kids are running around. All right, so that's our first panel. Now, it's also a good idea, though, to kind of read through the whole thing. Close medium shot, that's panel 2, close medium shot of King Cedric waving to Arnza and Dex. Okay, and then there's the dialogue. You don't have to worry about that until later. In panel 3, wide panel, medium shot of Arnza and Dex with King Cedric, his back to us in the foreground. Okay, so those are our 3 panels. Let's take a look at this and figure it out. All right, so half a page. That would be right here. Okay. Now, you don't have to put it in a guideline if you don't want to. As a matter of fact, because it isn't the exact center of the page, it wants to be a little bit difficult. Okay, but the guidelines do. But if you are working digitally, it does make it easier to make a straight line. So let's just, all you got to do is just kind of run your paintbrush, pulling on the shift key along there. Okay, that's a half. You know what? I'm thinking right now, looking at this, I think it might be more effective if we actually made this panel even bigger. See, and this is why you do thumbnails. When you're actually sitting there writing a script, you say to yourself, okay, well, let's do it this way. But then when you actually sit down to do it, sometimes, sometimes you realize that, oh, hey, maybe something else would work better. Whoops, held down the shift key too far there. So there's our little lines there. And according to what we have set up here, geez, did it again. There we go. So our layout's going to look something like that. Okay. And, typically what you want to do as well is like up here where it says title, let's see, this would be the gods of the earth. And it's issue, that's going to be an issue 1. And this is going to be page 1 of this story. I've already got a 6-pager that I did for the same book. This one's actually 14, so it's going to be a total of 20 pages in the comic. All right, so let's take another look at our script. And let's see. Arns and Dex arriving at a Celtic settlement outside of the city of Lafuna. Okay, so this is going to be sort of out in the woods. And now thumbnails can be really rough. Okay, just really rough sketches where you're just kind of figuring things out. So let's see. It says there is let's put a little bit of foreground and background in there. I'm going to put in let's see, it's just some rough sketches of some people doing stuff. Put in maybe a Celtic guy here who's put on a little fire here, and maybe he's a wheelwright or something like that. Maybe a couple of guys working on this, just doing their daily activity. And these guys are Celtic, so they are what would be considered barbarians. Okay, at least by the so-called civilized people. And it's always good to do some research and find out what some of the stuff ought to look like. I'm going to toss in here a little kid maybe, and a dog. The dog kind of looking at him slightly, and these kind of things you just kind of, they're not written in necessarily, but you just sort of think about, okay, well, what would be going on, in a place like this. And what I tend to do too is I will do what I call drawing through a panel, where a lot of times I'll start with the stuff that's in the background, figures and whatnot. Let's draw a female figure. Let's put in a little mud hut here, and another one over here where there might be shops and homes and things like that. And of course, we want to have some trees. Again, these can be really rough. These are just, where you're planning stuff out. And right here, sort of the center of the thing here, I want to have the main house. This would be where King Cedric lives. Now, I'm not worrying too much about perspective and all that stuff right now. It's not a big concern. I'm just roughly sketching stuff out. So we'll have put on some little unlike the rest of them, this would be like stone and almost like sort of a longhouse that Vikings and that sort, because Vikings and Celts were actually fairly closely related. Maybe some sort of large symbol or something right up there. And I'll put in some more trees back here. We'll put in maybe some sort of little portico, some wooden pillars. Yeah, something along those lines, you know. I did a little bit of research looking at what these kind of things would be like, and and there we are. Let's put in some. This is northern Italy, so it'd be pretty mountainous. More trees and stuff like that. And then, of course, we need to, and this is why we need to put in our main figures. And this is what I mean when I say like drawing through. You know, you start with the stuff in the background, uh, and then you put the actual people that are your main characters more into the foreground. That's what I'm leaving this sort of space open for. But you want to have this pretty well, you know, filled up. Now, right over here, I'm going to sketch in a character wearing a cloak, and that is going to be King Cedric. Sort of making a place for him right there. Sort of keeping an eye on everything that's going on in his little village. And another thing too, if you're doing a scene where there are a number of people milling about, what you want to do is, and this is just a cartooning thing, um, you want to have people basically doing their own thing. You want to remember that everybody's got a story, right? So, you know, the main characters are going to be showing up here in town, but you know, this kid that's playing with his dog, he doesn't give a toss about that. He's just, you know, whatever, you know. Who are these guys that are wearing, you know, skirts? Because actually, Celts were big on wearing pants, not shirts all the time, but they wore trousers mainly, and not you know, you read or see movies like Conan the Barbarian, which I love that stuff, I do. But you know, the guy's always wearing like, you know, what looks like a fur diaper. Barbarians did not wear that sort of a thing. No, do a little research and you find out that um, actually Celts tended to wear um, trousers that were gathered at the ankle, um, and a lot of times were plaid, different sort, and you know, kind of a forerunner of the tartans and stuff. I'll put on a female character here. Again, people just going out there, doing their own thing. These would be crossed beams up here. I want to make sure that I make a note of that. Again, when you're doing these things, these are like notes to yourself. There. Okay. Now, what we can do is we can sketch in our characters. So we're going to probably erase out some of this stuff. Let's bring in a little perspective, sort of lines here from here to here and figure out where we want to put them. So let's put in, sort of roughly sketch in, it would be Dex. Now notice I'm drawing right over top. That's okay. It's not a big deal. You can always erase away the other stuff that you don't need when you're drawing through. Again, these are really rough. So what you want to do is you want to start with, when you're drawing a figure, if you haven't had figure drawing or have been through the ART.206, where we talk about the human figure, you basically draw the person without the clothes first, and then you can throw the clothes on top of it later. Okay, so like in this case, let's make that eraser just a little bit bigger. Not that big. 15 will do it. Whoop. Oh, my little smart key, it reset um, it reset itself when I tried to resize it. These updates that they put in these programs sometimes drive me nuts. So that's 5 there. Okay, and then let's make that there, and that. Okay, that is bigger now. All right, so we're racing away some of the extra stuff here, and now let's go ahead and put in this character. If you remember from the character design stuff, he usually wears armor because he's a mercenary originally. So he's got kind of a little skirt that he wears, a cuirass, which is a breastplate, and these little things that come off of here. He's also got a sword, be right about in here somewhere, and tunic. Sketching just enough so we can see which direction that he's facing. Again, you can keep these really rough. These are just for you to kind of figure out. I actually would get in, when I was working on my master's degree in illustration, I would do really tight thumbnails. And my instructor didn't realize these were thumbnails, and he's like, well, hey, you missed a step. Where's your thumbnails? Pencils look great, but where? And I was like, these are the thumbnails. And he was like, oh, okay. So I learned to kind of loosen them up quite a bit. All right, so there's our Dex, and then Arnza, of course, is a little bit slightly smaller guy, so we'll sketch out. He'll be right about in here somewhere. He's wearing his usual cloak. I'm going to have the breeze blowing the cloak off just a little bit so we can see the sling bag that he's got. So put that in there. Things like hands and stuff, unless they are specifically called for in the script, you don't have to worry too much about them. Little skirt there. Let's go ahead and erase away some of this other stuff that we don't need. And notice too, when you do the drawing through, as I call it, okay, if you've put in the stuff in the background first, when you put in the people in the things in the foreground, notice how it fills the scene. It makes the scene look complete. Okay, it makes it, I just think it works better, frankly. So he's got his belt. He's wearing sandals that have kind of a thing going on there. Now, when I go to do the actual pencils, I might switch around. Both their leg positions are the same right now in this, and I might change that just for variety's sake when I do the pencils. And that's the thing. You can always, you're working stuff out at this point. And that's where you can say, okay, maybe I'll switch that up when I actually do the finished pencils. All right, so there's panel 1. That should work pretty well. Okay, let's take a look and see panel 2. All right, close medium shot of King Cedric waving to Arns and Dex. And then ho there lads and all that kind of stuff, the dialogue. Okay, so that would be this panel right here. Now, let's zoom in a little bit. Hey there. Hang on a second. My Photoshop seems to have locked up for a second. Let me resolve this. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what was going on. I just updated Photoshop yesterday, and when you get updates, sometimes things are a little bit hinky. Okay, so what we've got is we've got King Cedric over in this area here, and these guys over here, right? And so he's going to be waving to him, so he's going to be facing this direction. So we'll sketch in roughly Now I want to leave a little bit of room at the top so we can pop in some dialogue, and we'll roughly sketch in some basic guidelines. Again, if you've um, been through drawing one, you know about this kind of stuff. And here's the thing too: if you want in order to keep things right, if you want to draw a little bit outside of the panel, like I'm doing with this arm here, you can do that. Then you can just erase away the extra if you want. So here's King Cedric. Again, this is just a sort of a blank character right now. He's not really King Cedric yet. But yeah, so I've drawn in the rest of this, and then I can go back in once I got it figured out and know where the placement of the hand would be and get rid of that. And I know it's correct. Okay, so I did that. Let's pause. All right, sorry about that. I had to pause because I had to find my reference for King Cedric and what he actually looks like. I've actually got sitting next to me a little 8-inch maquette. A maquette is a little figure that people use to as sort of a reference. There was a little selection going on there. Okay, so right now he's kind of blank. What I need to do is make him look like the actual character now. So I'm using this maquette. Again, it's a little 3D figure. He's got tuft of hair like that. He's an older guy. He's got longer hair because he's a barbarian. He's got a sort of receding, but he's got kind of curled in the front. And he's got a big nose. He's an older guy, but fierce warrior, but gregarious and always smiling. And he's got quite a bristly mustache, because that was the ancient Celts. That was their thing. They had a tendency to wear mustaches, something like that, and quite a strong jaw. But he's an older guy, so he's got a little bit going, a little bit extra meat on his bones. He's wearing a short sleeve shirt and a cloak. So we'll draw in some wrinkles there. There's the band for the cloak. Here's go right about in here. And he's wearing some fairly heavy sort of armor. There's going to be a little bit of a neck band on this. All right, so there's Mighty King Cedric. And get rid of some of these extraneous lines that I don't need. A little bit more hair right over here. I want to differentiate the hair from the hood of the cloak. Okay, so that's good enough for that panel. Now let's take a quick look at our script again. And it says, let's see, wide panel, medium shot, arms and decks with King Cedric with his back to us in the foreground. So let's start with King Cedric here. Start drawing in his cloak. Now, when you're doing characters from behind, you don't have to do the entire the entire thing where you're like drawing through and all that sort of thing. So I'm just gonna like I sort of base this King Cedric on the look of him anyway on a former professor of mine who's now retired. Something like that, and then let's see. We want to make sure we get this right. Facing this way, Dex is on the left and Arns is on the right. So this would be a turnaround. So, and this actually works with the script because the first one to speak is going to be Arnza, so the word balloon would be on the left, and then Dex cuts him off, and that word balloon would be to the right of it. So you want to think about that sort of thing, where the characters are in relation to one another, and as well as their speaking order, because you don't want to have your balloons overlap each other. That usually never works too well. So we'll sketch out these guys. Notice in this one too, because the focus is on the characters, I'm not worried about the whole like drawing through thing. Okay. Right now I'm just, thinking about these guys here. So there's his little bag. And he's actually talking, so we'll have him sort of gesturing with his hand. Let's see, that would be thumb on the outside. And again, this is really rough, so you'd have to get too detailed with it. Now let's go ahead and toss in the defining look for Arnza, which is his hair, his curly hair, which are just three circular shapes, and then dot eyes. Just really sketchy. And then the other character here, Dex, which again just sort of quickly sketch in just enough to make the character identifiable to you. Now, chances are, nobody's going to see the thumbnails but you. Now, every once in a while, though, you will have a publisher that wants to see the thumbnails, and these are probably the same guys who would want to see a script. And so, sometimes you have to go back in and clean them up a little bit and make it obvious, who's what and what's where. But for the most part, this stuff you're just notes to yourself. So sometimes I won't even like fill in faces and stuff like that. Other times I will. Depends on how I'm feeling about it at the time. In this case, since this is for a lecture, yeah, let's go in and kind of roughly sketch in something definable about the character of Dex, which is his kind of tough look, his broken nose, and his hair, and all that kind of stuff. All right. And then, of course, we can throw in just a little bit of background stuff here. You want to make sure that your characters are in the correct perspective in relation to each other. Let's see. Let's fix that a little bit. His hair is actually going to be more like, and this is just a little convention of mine. I want to make sure that actually is receding way back and then goes forward into, he's got kind of sideburn things going on. Again, he's a barbarian king, so he's not going to look like the rest of these guys with their short hair and all that stuff. All right, we'll put in some trees and back here, and then maybe some of those other little huts. the village. You don't have too much though. You don't want to distract from the people. So I think I'll just have the trees kind of taper off, so there's not anything above Arns's head to compete with him. Just have that, and there we go. All right, so that is page 1 thumbnails, pretty much done. Okay. Now let's before I let you go, and we're about 30 minutes right now. Let's go ahead and take a look at a completed example, okay, of thumbnail pages. This was, come on, here we go. These were the thumbnails that I did for the first Arns story called The Well of the Warlock. Now this wasn't done digitally. This was done in pencil. You can see here where I printed out printed out the sheet. Actually, I actually keep a binder full of these things where I can just kind of go through the pages and kind of sketch all the stuff out. It's from The Well of the Warlock, the first story. Same kind of thing. You can see there's a little difference between my art style when I'm penciling and when I'm doing it digitally. But essentially, the reason for the thumbnails is the same thing. Doesn't matter which tool you use, pencil or digital. So that's page 1. There's page 2, which is a flashback to a throne room. Okay, flashback, and then back to now, where they're like creeping through a underground cavern, and then they find the warlock who's taken a girl, and this is a very short story, only 6 pages. Decide to attack, are rebuffed by magic, okay, and try to, Dex tries to take him again, and again is stopped, and then the undead warlock turns to Arnza, and Arnza figures that he's doomed, but because he's a little philosopher, has questions for the warlock as like how his whole being a zombie thing works, and he makes the warlock stop and think about it, and when he stops to think about it, the magic stops working and the guy crumbles into dust. End of story. Okay, so fun little thing. I only had 6 pages to work with. It appeared in a little anthology called Brain Freeze, and that was all I was allotted by the publisher, was 6 pages. So I had to make it work. I had to make a complete sword and sorcery story in 6 pages, beginning, middle to end. It was a interesting exercise in how to create a very tight story. Okay, yeah, and this one is going to appear since I own the rights to the character. The publisher doesn't care if I reprint this story in my own publication or something like that. So this one here, like I said, this story is 14 pages long. The other one is 6. That gives me 20 pages, which is what you want to do. You want to work in multiples of 4 when it comes to a page count. And that's for printing reasons. Okay, so that is it. That is the lesson for today on thumbnails. All right, we'll pick this up again when we talk about doing finished pencils. See you then.